Hello, Ellie here with my sidekick, Dobby, and today I am talking about Tower of Dawn by Sarah J Maas. In case you don't know, and you've been living under a rock, this is mostly the 6th book in the Throne of Glass series, which is all lined up here. Originally, this was supposed to be when the final book comes out, which was supposed to be the 6th book, and this little booger was supposed to be a short novella telling about what was happening at the same time as Book 5, Empire of Storms, but it became a book just as long as Empire of Storms, so it was a whole other book. I'm gonna be honest, I was not super excited for this book. I actually didn't feel like I was picking up a new Sarah J Maas book when I first picked this up because I didn't have the excitement that I normally have, mostly because out of the good guys and the main characters in the series, Chaol is probably my least favorite. Mostly because in book 1 and 2, I was totally Team Dorian and Chaol was the competition and I just didn't like him for that reason. And then Heir of Fire came and any good in him was kind of destroyed by his reactions to things happening in there. And then he didn't redeem himself at all in Queen of Shadows. And then he wasn't even in Empire of Storms. Are those spoilers? Minor spoilers. Sorry about the minor spoilers, but they're not huge deals, I guess. Anyway, but then he got his own book here. So I was like, alright, so I have to read an entire book about one of my least favorite characters instead of the book that I'm really dying for. And I know Sarah J Maas is gonna make me like him, and I don't want to like him. Yeah, it happens. I still don't like him as much as some other characters, but he definitely was able to grow on me. And if you are somebody that is considering not reading this book because you don't want to read about Chaol, yeah, don't do that. There's a lot in this book that you need to know. There are discoveries, there are twists and turns, and there's just plot and character development that you're going to be confused if you don't understand and know about. And we meet new characters. I'm going to talk a little bit about it in the non-spoilery section. If you're curious, I would call it kind of like Chaol's Heir of Fire. So if you've read the series, you know that there's a lot of development that happens with our protagonist in Heir of Fire. And Chaol goes through something similar to that in this book. And I think his character really needed it, and that's why he did grow on me. Because he faced those things that I didn't like about him in the past, and a lot of readers didn't like about him. He really faced those head on, and this was his journey of kind of overcoming that. And a whole bunch of other stuff happens. It's Sarah J Maas, what can you say? That's it for my super non-spoilery section. Now I'm gonna get into spoilers through all of these. I'm not quite getting into these yet. All of these. So if you haven't read these yet, go check that out. Obviously, the reason I was not excited for this is because the way Empire of Storms ended, I just needed to see Aelin. These two are happening simultaneously. So everything in this book is happening while this book is going on. So it was interesting to see because there is a little bit of crossover, I guess, where they hear overseas a little bit about what Aelin and Dorian and Rowan and all of them have been up to, but just a little. So it's enough to understand where the timeline is and how it all fits together, but it's not enough that you're like, okay, been there, done that, I know what's going on. The other thing I need to be honest about is because I wasn't that into Chaol, I didn't care that much about his relationship with Nezrin in Queen of Shadows, so I was a little confused going into this one exactly what their background was, because I just didn't care enough to pay attention. Like, I knew they were together and that they were going on this journey together, but I didn't remember a lot of their backstory, and I probably should have looked into that a little bit before starting this, because there were several things that had me a little bit confused, because I just didn't care enough to remember it in Queen of Shadows. Sorry. I did enjoy the book. I gave it 4 stars, which is less than I normally give Sarah J Maas books. It did take me a good 150 to 200 pages to get into it, partly again because I didn't really like the main character that much. in general, and because it was introducing a brand new land and several new characters, again, similar to Heir of Fire, where a lot of people skipped the Manon chapters at first because nobody cared. It was kind of like that, where there were all of these new characters that you didn't really care that much about, and even the character I did know, I didn't care that much about, so it was much slower to start than most of Sarah J Maas's books at this point in the series, where you can just dig in and be excited about what's been happening. But it did get there, and it was intense. I will say Chaol and Nesrin kind of have their own stories, but like coinciding with each other throughout this book. I got into Chaol's story first, so for a while I was like, all right, let's get past Nesrin because I need to get back to Chaol. But then all of a sudden Nesrin's story got really good too. So it's definitely worth reading. You will enjoy it. I don't think it's as good as some of the other ones, but it was still good. I'm glad I read it. I would definitely regret not having read it. So go check it out. If you have not read it already, I'm giving my official spoiler warning right now. Go read it and then come back, okay? Okay, bye. I did take some notes on my phone while I was reading this, so I'm going to go through those and kind of have that help me tell my emotions, because I had a lot of emotions. A little bit into the story, I think this was 150 pages in, I made a comment that I was finally shipping Chaol with somebody, and it wasn't Nesrin, because I definitely never shipped him with Selena. I didn't really care about him in Nesrin, but Irene, I don't know how it's pronounced, but yeah, no, that was adorable. I loved it. From like the first time they met, I'm like, this is gonna be a thing, and it's gonna be awkward because Nesrin is there, but this is gonna be a thing, and it's adorable, and I love it. Pretty early on, I thought it was going to end up being the queen, or whatever you call the leader's wife, that was going to end up being evil, or a Valg, or possessed. Because we never see her. She's been like off mourning, but she's literally not in the book. So I swore that the reason she wasn't there is because she was avoiding Chaol, knowing that Chaol might see the signs, and she couldn't be near that. I don't know, I thought I had it all figured out, but I was wrong. I'm getting all fangirly. I really did like Chaol and Irene. So they have that moment at that party with like the fumes and all of that, and they feel really guilty because Keshin is watching, and more importantly, Nesrin is there. They were so cute. And then they go back, and Nesrin falls asleep in Chaol's bed. But then they have that conversation. He's like, she knows. And then he's like, I know too. I was like, wait, did they just break up? I don't understand what's happening right now. And then she left a note that was like, I don't hold you to any promises, and I won't stick to any promises either. And I was like, oh, they just broke up. But did they? I don't know. It was not super clear. And Chaol agreed with me because he's sitting there feeling guilty for these feelings he's having for Irene, but at the same time, she said, I'm not holding you to any promises. So he's like, what does that mean? Does that mean I'm free to do whatever I want? Or am I like hurting her by doing this? Was she doing that just to be selfless? Or is it true? And I did have a comment at one point, you shouldn't feel guilty because she's totally getting somewhere she is too. I did leave a comment on there also saying, halfway through this book, and at this moment, I don't care about the Nesrin parts, but that changed. I loved meeting, I'm gonna call her Borty, just cause I like that better than Bort, and it probably is Borty or something like that. I loved her. Meeting her actually reminded me a lot of meeting Moore from the Court of Thorns and Roses series. I got the same kind of feeling of that like familial, joking, teasing, female friend person. I don't know what I'm saying, but I really liked her. So we meet this Falcon, and my initial reaction was like, okay, this guy's kind of weird. And then I'm like, ooh, that's who Aelin got the spider silk from. Oh my goodness, everything from Assassin's Blade is coming back. And then we were like, holy crap, he's Lysandra's uncle. What? So Aelin had met Lysandra's uncle before she was friends with Lysandra and did a trade with him, and then he met Irene, who Aelin also met back then. And, oh my god, meanwhile, Irene keeps talking about this note that she's holding around, and of course it came from Aelin. And she keeps talking to Chaol about this note. No! she kept talking to Kale about this note. And I was like, just show it to him. Show it to him. He knows something. I'm like, show him the note and he will give you more information about it. But she didn't until the very end, but I'll get to that. When Nesrin leaves and Kale, I don't even know what he was thinking, but he lashes out against Nesrin. I mean, I know what he was thinking. He was feeling guilty because he felt like he was pushing Nesrin away and like cheating on her basically, which, you know, he kind of was, but she didn't mind because she was also emotionally cheating on him. So he pushes her away and he says this terrible thing, and I just made a comment like, oh, there's the Kale I hate. He says like the one thing that can really get under a girl's skin, and he was extremely lucky that she got it and knew that it was himself that he was having a problem with and not her, because any other girl would have left. And he knew that. He knew, like, if this girl leaves, she's gone, and I can't handle that again, not with her. Luckily, she got it and used that moment to trick him into walking instead, which was really cute. I do need to talk about the whole learning to walk again thing. Kale has magic make him able to walk again despite a spinal injury that had him in a wheelchair and unable to feel or move his legs or feet or toes. I do like the way it was done, the way it was little by little, and it was the magic in the injury that was keeping him down, and it was also the injury in himself. With that said, I feel like it was a little bit of ableism, and this was partially him too, in that he didn't feel like the same person once he had this injury. However, at the same time, I feel like that is something that a lot of people go through when they have a sudden injury and it's not something that they were born with, because it is a completely different life and you need to learn how to live a different way. And I feel like anytime somebody goes through a major life change, whether good or bad, something seems off and you need to learn how to live this new way. And that takes time. I do kind of like that at the end, he ends up only partially cured and needing Irene as a crutch, because by that time he was able to accept who he is, both his past and his present. And he flat out says, like, whether I'm in a chair or standing or whatever, it doesn't matter because I'm here and we're together, and that's what matters. That shows that even if he was still in the chair, even if he never learned how to walk again, the emotional journey he went on would have made it okay. And I think it fits better for the story that he's able to walk and fight and do everything he wants to do. I do need to talk about the fact that I feel, and I might eat these words, and I can't believe I'm saying this, I feel like Sarah just set him and Irene up for death in the final book. And I'm getting teary-eyed thinking about this. But number one, the fact that they're married. There's nowhere else for them to go with their relationship. They've hit that point. I'll talk about that again in a second. So there's nowhere forward for them to go. They've gone as far as they could in one book. And then they have this thing about them being connected. If one dies, the other dies. That's too big of a plot point to not revisit. Obviously, it will be revisited in a moment when she's using her magic and he suddenly falls to the floor weak. But I just see something, and I'm getting teary-eyed thinking about this. I just see a scene in my head where they're off separately doing what they need to do for the war. Kale is standing and holding his ground and fighting. Irene is curing somebody from the Valg, and she's using her power, and Kale is feeling the draining and he needs to pull his cane out, and he's suddenly with his cane, but he's still fighting, maybe even with that damn cane. And Irene just keeps using her powers. It's like the final thing, I don't know, maybe it's Parrington that she's using her powers on right now. And fight, powers, and she uses all of her powers, and Kale hits the ground but refuses to stop, and it's done. But of course that wouldn't be seen. We would just kind of go over, and then Dorian, it would have to be Dorian, I'm like about to start crying, would like run over as Kale is like dying, and then somehow they would like get Irene to him because they were fighting at like different parts of the same area, and they would just like die together. Okay, now I hope this doesn't happen because I don't think I can handle it. I'm losing it. Whew! What is it with Sarah J Maas and secret weddings? This one wasn't even necessary. Although, I guess if that other stuff happens, I guess it was. But like, in the other books when she's done a secret wedding, it had like made sense. Like, oh my gosh, the one in Empire of Storms just made it so dramatic, and that one was wonderful. But this one, they'd only met a couple months ago. Like, nobody expected them to get married. They didn't need to get married unless they're gonna die. Crap. What did I just do? A little bit into the book, I said I hope it's gonna end with them finding the others, but it's more likely for it to end with them setting out to find the others, which I was right about. I'm gonna talk more about that in a second. Kale goes through this thing where he realizes that Aelin waited to be with Rowan until she came back and officially broke things off with Kale. I never saw it that way. Am I crazy, or were those like completely different things? Because by the time Aelin left and Kale realized who she really was, they were pretty much broken up as far as I was concerned. First of all, they had been fairly broken up before then, when she like clawed his face off and said that they would always be enemies. They never really got back together after that. And yes, she said, I would always choose you, but it was still like a goodbye. Not even like a see you later, but like a goodbye. So I always thought of her and Rowan not getting together in Heir of Fire as something between them, partly because, first of all, they hated each other at first. And then they had this other relationship, and they kept saying that there was nothing romantic between them. And it didn't seem like Aelin being like, I'm gonna say there's nothing here because I feel guilty about Kale. It just felt like she just didn't want to see that there was anything romantic there, even though there totally was. Once she finally saw Kale again, they never had a like, all right, so we're gonna be broken up now conversation at all. So I don't know what he was talking about there. Maybe, I don't know, I think that was like his own guilt festering onto Aelin and realizing that even though he's always saw himself as like more moral and noble than Aelin, she was the one that was willing to wait because of him, but he couldn't do the same thing for Nesrin, and that's awful. I need to talk about my issue with Kale. I knew I never liked Kale, but I couldn't figure out why, because he seems like the type of person I would like. But here's my issue. This is why I hated Kale and loved Dorian. They are opposites. Like, they're best friends, but they are polar opposites. Kale is this noble, moral person, or at least he wants to be. He works so hard to appear to always be doing the right thing and be noble and everything. But when it comes to those moments that really matter, where he really needs to make a difficult choice, he goes the wrong way. He hurts people. He doesn't do the right thing. He goes with nobility and notoriety over right. Dorian is the opposite. Dorian is this fun-loving guy who enjoys a good laugh and seems to not care about anything, but when it comes to those big choices and those moments that really matter, he always does the right thing, which is why I've always adored Dorian, and Kale always got under my skin. That's what it comes down to. Kale did face a lot of that in this book, and he recognized it, and he's dealing with it, and he's working past it, which makes me like him a little bit more. I haven't talked about Cernak. I really like him. That's all I really have to say. I don't know how I feel about him being the heir now, but I guess everybody else is a king or queen, so why not? Alright, so at one point we hear about the big fight that happened in Empire of Storm, and I'm like, alright, we've made it to the end of Empire of Storm, and there are 50 pages left. Maybe they will actually meet up with them. Yeah, this is gonna be great. And then I have a note here that's quoting, saying, Aelin was spotted returning on her ship. It's Lysandra. It's happening. And I couldn't. I literally wrote, make it stop, make it stop. Oh my gosh. And then the high healer disappears, and my reaction was literally like, well, guess we're not meeting up with the others then. So they went down there, and they met up with Duva with her big baby belly, and the Black Val guys. Yeah, that hurt. There was a lot happening there. I'm not gonna fully get into it, because if you read it, you know, and I don't have much to say beyond what's already in the book. So we get to the end of the book, and they all keep making comments like, oh, as long as we have Aelin, everything will be okay. As long as Aelin can use her firepower, Everything will be fine. Alan can read this note for you. Alan's gonna want to see that. Oh my gosh, it hurt so much. The dramatic irony at the end of this book destroyed me. Everything. They're like, oh, Alan will be there. It'll be fine. Alan, 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 Alan. She's in a coffin, okay? She's locked away where you can't go to her. I can't wait for this last book. And then I just have a comment about the secret wedding again. And when Kale finally sees the note and immediately knows the handwriting and is cutely just like, hold on to that. I think there's somebody that's gonna wanna see it. Except, you know, it's gonna be a while until we see her because she's locked in a coffin, but he didn't know that. And then I get to the very last chapter and it is titled Fireheart. And my heart stopped. I was like, Fireheart, 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 Fireheart. And then it's just her having been in that coffin, being pulled out with Maeve, who we now know is the Queen Valg. Which makes a lot of sense. If you watch my other video, I was like, nothing makes sense that she's doing. Yeah, now it does. Now it totally does. So she's like pulling her out and looking at her, and that's how the book ends. She's the Queen Valg. And she has Aelin. Okay. I think that's all I can handle right now. If you like this video, don't forget to give me a thumbs up. Click up here to subscribe. Follow me on Twitter at ReaderGonnaRead. And I will talk to you next time. Goodbye! Hey, Ellie and Dobby here. Like the video? Come subscribe. Do it right now. Click it.